Okay.
All right, so good people, great people, guys, people, welcome to the second episode of Odie's Office. And with me, I have Miss JoAn.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And Miss JoAn, we were talking a little bit before we started recording, and I think this is gonna be a pretty impactful episode. We're gonna ruffle a couple of feathers, you feel what I'm saying? People gonna be upset. But it's all right though. It's all right though. You know what I'm saying?
I don't think so. But I'm hoping that we can inspire people. Let's say that. I'm hoping we can inspire people.
Okay, but you know what I'm saying? That's the reason why they had a whole TV show called Growing Pains. In order for you to grow, you got to go through something. You feel me?
That's right.
But before we get into that, please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you.
Absolutely. So my name is JoAn Monplaisir. I am Haitian American, originally from Brooklyn, New York. I live in the DMV area right now. I am a hospice therapist, and I'm also a birth and postpartum doula, full spectrum. Yeah, that's me.
Okay. So we got another healer, we got another shaman in our midst. I appreciate that. You feel me? So we're gonna continue rolling into the conversation that we were having previously.
Okay.
And I do want to lead with what it is that you specifically said that you experience with Black women who are giving birth.
Okay.
What was the phraseology that you used? It was great.
I'll introduce the phrase. So as a birth and postpartum doula, I have the privilege of working with individuals and couples as they bring new life into this world and help them take care of that new life when they bring the baby back home. Yeah. What I've often found, which is unfortunate, but it's often happening, that I work with married women who are single moms with husbands. And what I mean by that is, the husband or the partner, if it is a man, is often not involved in the child rearing process. They are often very, what is it? Oh, there's a phrase that I've used, convenient ignorance. Where it's like, oh, I don't know how to do all these things. And so I'm just going to leave that to the person who's been doing it their whole lives, or the person who should know how to do these things. And so it's very convenient for them to feign ignorance. For some, and I want to put that disclaimer out there, not all, but for some. And so it's a long learning curve, and it's a lot of mental load, physical load for the birthing person to have to take care of the child, but also teach their partner how to be a parent.
Okay, so we gotta unpack that. All right, so I'm going to weave through this in a couple of different ways. The first way is this: I agree to a particular extent, right? Convenient ignorance is a great way to put it. I also think that when you said feign ignorance, to feign means to attempt to falsify or attempt to construct in such a way where it aligns with the idea of not being able to. Absolutely. There are some men who genuinely don't know how to be parents.
They don't. Agree.
Maybe not, right? I also agree with the fact that it is an unfair load to have to teach somebody how to be a parent. We are in the age of information. Go look it up. You got a mama. Ask. Like, you got sisters. Ask.
But again, therein lies the responsibility on female and femmes to then teach a male how to be a parent. Why can't he go to his father? Why can't he go to his uncle? What is the assumption that it's only women that know how to rear children? Is it only women that know how to? Do you get me? Like,
I'm gonna answer your question with a question.
Okay.
Do you truly believe that a lot of men believe that their fathers raised them?
No.
So why would you ask somebody who didn't know how to raise you how to raise a child?
Understood, but that's the problem. That's the problem, right? Like that you feel like you can't go to an older male relative to ask about parenting.
Right. So we're looking at this from a conceptualization of breaking intergenerational curses, right? So here's the thing. I don't necessarily believe that there's a problem inherently with asking women how to raise children, especially if women have been delegated to be the experts in that realm. I believe it's a problem when you do not take when you do not take some of the emotional labor off of women and attempt to learn some of these things yourself. What do I mean by that? There are a number of Black men who trust their mothers with their lives, but do not trust their women with their emotions. Right? I'm saying that one more time. There are a number of Black women who trust their mothers with their lives, but do not trust their partners with their emotions. Right? What do I mean by that? There are a number of Black men who are afraid to falter at manhood in front of their wives. They are. So to ask your wife, how do I raise this child, for a lot of Black men, reeks of lack of leadership. It reeks of lack of being able to have this direction within the family. So they delegate to their mothers, they delegate to their aunts, they delegate to the women in the family who are supposedly the ones who know how to raise children, which I don't necessarily believe is a problem in and of itself, right? Because once again, we are still working in a social structure that delegated women to do these particular things. I also believe that there are a lot of men who are afraid to be vulnerable that way because they're afraid that they might mess it up.
Right.
Right. I think that we perceive men in such an emotionally narrow way because once again, we have been socialized to perceive men in an emotionally narrow way. Right. I got mad homeboys, you feel what I'm saying, who one are fathers, but also two are raising girls. And some of them, they genuinely panic, and I can see that they're panicked, and they respond in toxically masculinist ways, not because it's intentional, but because it's the only thing that they know. But there's a part of them that knows that that's not necessarily right, which is the reason why they yield to their wives, because it's like, I don't know, and I don't want to mess this up. Because once again, a lot of them know how their own fathers mishandled them emotionally, and they don't want to be that same father. They don't want to be that same man, but they don't know who else to ask, which is the reason why I asked the question at the outset. If your mother was emotionally absent, emotionally abusive, and emotionally manipulative, would it be your first intent to ask her how to raise a child?
Absolutely not. But I wonder then, what do male partners do when both parents are absent, right? So then who do you turn to?
You turn to the closest friend who you think is the best parent. To be quite honest with you, right? So I'm going to give you an example. A lot of my friends now are becoming new parents, and first and foremost, that shit is freaking me out because it's like, I'm going to give you an example. So one of my friends had a baby, right? And I love this baby so much. And I have that baby. His name is Omar. He is the son to Taryn and Marcus Prince, right? I love this baby so much. I haven't even met him. He's just so full of joy. He's beautiful, right? For me, I feel that what it is that is my role for that family is to provide emotional support where I can. You feel what I'm saying? So if my sister posts something along the lines of this is a good mother, but this is also a good mother, I'm gonna come in with the boom, you're doing a great job, mommy, simply because you're a mommy. You feel what I'm saying? If I see my brother posting with Omari, so like he posted something, he was like, bro, screaming. And I'm like, nah, bro, he gonna be a singer when he get older. He was like, he ain't doing nothing but screaming. I'm like, he practicing his range. That's all he doing, right?
Right.
I attempt to make sure that I provide that emotional space, not necessarily because I feel like they need it, but I know that it's needed. And I know that it's needed in a masculine or a male way. Because a lot of us as men, and I wrote a piece on this on Twitter, a lot of us as men are learning how to crawl when women already know how to sprint. And there are a number of women who are frustrated with the fact that they have to drag some of us while they're sprinting. And it's like, no, brother, I understand where you all are frustrated. And there's a part of me that's like, all right, I really need y'all to see this for what it really is as it relates to social structures and how men are actually psychically removed from their emotions. But then I turn around and I tell the men, like, that's not an excuse for you to not learn how to get up and run. It's not an excuse. And a lot of y'all are using it as an excuse. It's not.
It's the way that cis women and cis men are socialized. But I also think, okay, so if you experience this as a cis woman in a heterosexual relationship and you have a son, how are you and your husband, your partner, then working towards your son not perpetuating the same thing?
Okay. So
that's the challenge.
I'm gonna keep it in being with you, right? So there was something that I posted on TikTok, and of course, the women were like, "Oh, that's a beautiful thing," and the men was like, "Oh, you a simp, big girl, beat on my chest." I hate that shit. But no, so my mother told me a story about when I was close to an infant or close to a baby, and she, she used to love on me a lot. My father's from Nigeria. My father's African, you feel me? He talks like this all the time, right? African, you feel me?
Right.
And he told my mother to stop telling me that she loved me so much. And my mother told him in the gooniest of ways, "I will slit your throat." My mama is a goon, bro. Like, she from out west Chicago, 290, you feel what I'm saying? She said that to this man with a straight face. "I will slit your throat." My son is always going to know that he is loved, right?
Right.
The whole time, one of my largest issues with my father was that he was not emotionally available, and he did not know how to manage his emotions, right? So when my nephew was born, I'm like, we not doing this again. We're not. We're not repeating this, right? Me and my father almost came to blows because he was like, "You need to lower your voice." I'm like, "No, I'm not, because I really need you to understand what it is that I'm saying and how it is that I'm feeling about this situation. You will not continue to perpetuate this bullshit that you are doing right now. We're not doing this. We're not having a round two of this, dog. We're not, right?" Had to have the same conversation with my sister because she was being bullheaded with my father. I was like, "I understand. I get you. But he's a traditionalist, my G. You're going to sit here and remove this man from his first grandson because y'all had a falling out, bro? Nah, you on bullshit. He's going to know who his grandfather is because he has to know.
Right.
That's a part of his lineage, and that's a part of who he is. Now, whenever that baby was upset, guess who arms he was in?
Yours.
Well, no, not mine.
Not yours. Who's?
My father.
Grandpa?
My father. Whenever my nephew used to get upset as an infant, he would go to my father. And I'm like, "I'm so glad that you feel that as if though you have that ability to have that." Because there was a part of me that felt like I didn't. But I now know it's no longer my turn. So I have to facilitate that for him, right? So to answer your question in terms of systems theory, my mother had to be the person to let my father know, "I am not going to allow you to behave in this way around my child." Right? She had to be that defense. She also had to be that person who humanized my father, because my father, as I learned as I got older, he went through a number of emotional traumas himself, including parental abandonment, right? So my father had a host of things that were going on within himself that he did not know how to deal with because he lived in a society that did not recognize those things as real. You feel what I'm saying? So to answer your question succinctly outside of systems theory, I sincerely believe that there are a number of Black men who really need to identify where it is that their hurt begins. And a lot of Black men have that father absence or that mother wound that they have not healed, right? Which is the reason why I was talking about what it is that I was talking about on TikTok when I said that there are a number of men who are in competition with their sons as it relates to their wives. The same way there are a number of Black women who are in competition with their daughters as it relates to their men. It's this idea that I am attempting to parentalize this child, or I am attempting to
recreating the experience that they missed out on. Yeah.
Exactly, right? So as it relates to us as Black men navigating this space and becoming more open or becoming more emotionally aware, I think that we need to remove the idea that emotions are something that is feminine. Actually, I misspoke. I believe that we need to embrace the idea of femininity within emotions and move within that femininity to understand that there is power in that femininity. And a lot of Black men do not recognize the power in femininity because they're looking at it through a Eurocentric context.
Yeah. I had to marinate on that. Yes.
You feel what I'm saying? Because I'm not saying that my father was a bad father by any stretch of the imagination. Like, my father my mother was the breadwinner in our family, so my father was the one who got us up every morning, who made us food, who made sure that we got to school on time. Or if he couldn't do it, he asked one of the neighbors, like, can you take the kids to school? Like, my father was foundational in understanding how it is that I am as an individual in this world and how I operate. My father taught me a lot of great things, but the emotional part of him was missing, and that was the part that I felt like I needed the most growing up.
This is what I tell people there, that, you can have amazing parents, but you can have parents that are functional parents, which it sounds like your father was, but wasn't emotional. Like, I think good parenting is both functional and emotional, right? Functional in terms of, providing, teaching you lessons, blah, 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 but they weren't there emotionally. They weren't there to foster that emotional growth. They weren't there to really help, soothe you and things like that. Then you have the emotional parent, but who wasn't very functional, right? That loved you and all of that, but they just didn't provide. They didn't provide in the way that you needed to. So, yeah.
I think that the term or the terminology good parent is a misnomer. Right? Here's why. Have you ever seen the movie Soul?
No.
Please watch it.
Yeah.
It's an amazing movie.
Well, I've heard critiques about it that just make me like.
Listen.
Yeah, I haven't watched it yet.
I promise you, as somebody who I know works within the balance between the living world and the spiritual world, I think it will have a lot of lessons for you, right? So I suggest everybody watch Soul. But the reason why I asked that question was because there was a scene in the movie where, the soul does not come to the world complete, right? The soul comes to the world with something missing so that it can have a purpose in finding what it is that is missing, because that's its spark, right? I feel like it's something that's similar as it relates to children becoming adults, because we as adults are missing things, and there are things that we are continuously healing, and that healing is a lifelong journey. There is no such thing as a complete or a perfect or a good parent. There is a parent that provides you with particular levels of stability.
Good enough. There's the phrase "good enough parent." Yes.
Right.
Yes,
they're good enough, right?
Good enough.
Because I'm a firm believer that there's always going to be something that your parent does wrong.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Right. And I do sincerely feel as if though that brings parents a lot of guilt. But because they don't know how to process that guilt, because they're looking at everything else that they've done correctly, they become immensely defensive when you bring it up. Oh, I did this for you, I did that for you, I da da da. I'm like, I feel you on that. I got you. What I'm saying is that this hurts. Can we stop?
Right.
Does that make sense? Right? So how does this go back into the whole idea of Black cis women being married single women? It's the idea that a lot of Black men do not take the time to really discipline themselves in their emotional landscapes, because they feel that the emotional landscape is not worth exploring. They don't feel that it is, right? Or they feel
or is it
that
too hard to explore? Do you think they don't find worth in it, or do you think that it's too difficult for them to explore? It's too daunting.
I think it can be both.
Okay.
Right? So in a sense, it's like survivor's guilt, right? If you recognize that this is the person that you are, you then have to become accountable for all of the damage that you've done.
Right.
And for a lot of people, they've done a lot of damage. And it is frightening to have to go back and apologize or make amends for all of that damage, because, once again, what it is that I was talking about on Twitter, there are a number of Black men who are attempting to be better Black men, but when they are attempting to be better Black men, when they point something out, they don't get the reward that they're looking for. It's a new behavior. And a new behavior, behaviorally speaking, it's installed through systems of reward. Too often when Black men start becoming more emotionally aware, they do it too late, unfortunately. So there's no longer a reward system attached to it. Right. You no longer get kudos for being emotionally aware. Now it's, you should have knew about this. You should have been recognized this, right? Do I necessarily feel like that's fair? No. Right. But at the same time, it's the reality of the situation that we have to deal with. And yes, that is
Oftentimes
daunting.
they're finding that growth at the expense of someone else's hurt or trauma, right? So yeah.
They are growing their emotions on credit. And then when they finally realize that they have to pay this account back, it hurts them to know the amount of credit that they have to pay back.
I like that. Storing that away, yes. Yeah.
And it can get wild. It can get hectic because, and in no way, shape, or form am I saying that Black men are emotionally unaware. It's not what I'm saying.
No.
What I'm saying is that a lot of Black men operate, once again, in the context of Eurocentricity and its hierarchies, right? So I think a lot of Black men are trying to force themselves and Black women into a hierarchy that was not built.
Mm-hmm. Can
Right?
you say more about that?
Huh?
Can you say more about that?
Oh yeah, most definitely. So because in the first episode, I was talking to a young lady talking about, Black women having warrior spirits and how these warrior spirits in the Eurocentric context need to be tamed or controlled. But in the Afrocentric context, they require meeting them at the level that they exist at, right? A lot of Black men, because we were not able to express masculinity in the traditional, and when I say traditional, I mean white ways, or rather traditional in the white transformed way, but because we did not have access in white contexts, we felt emasculated, which is the reason why a lot of Black men, when they are out earned by Black women, they feel some type of way, right? Because we didn't have the same level of access and we didn't have the same opportunities. And the reality of the situation is some of us didn't, right? It becomes an issue because it becomes difficult to then move away from traditional masculinity because that's the only masculinity.
Yeah, right.
It then becomes a punishment to move away from that traditional masculinity because it's the only masculinity that you know.
And that's the only masculinity that's supported.
Exactly. Right. In order for you to reconstruct your own version of masculinity, you have to move against the grain. And that is always going to be a tiring thing. Always, because you are moving against the flow. A lot of men don't recognize that they don't even have to move within the flow. They can literally just exit.
Absolutely. Create their own lane. Yeah.
Right. And for me, in my mind, that's true masculinity, or that's higher order masculinity, to be able to recognize that I do not have to subvert or subject other people to pain in order to support myself in what it is that I'm doing. So if that's the case, if other people are not around for you to subject this terror to, who are you? How do you exist outside of the context of other people? Right? Because if you don't understand that, then there's no way that you understand yourself as an individual. Because you are constantly looking to others for feedback on who you are as a man.
And then how do you then influence a new generation if you don't even know who you are? So the thing is that we have a lot of people who don't know who they are. A lot of men, cis men, who don't know who they are. They don't know the direction of their own masculinity. And then they are tasked with the responsibility of then raising a new generation of men, of young men, young women too, but yeah. Absolutely,
right? So I think a lot of men don't know who they are, but they know what they do, right? Or what they can do, right? So I'm going to give you an example. A lot of men feel threatened by women who have higher order degrees because they know that they've only achieved the GED or at the most an associate's. They know what they are capable of. And for a lot of men, that what is more important than who, or they believe that what is more important than who, because we've been contextualized that way. I hear a lot of men in my comments will say stuff like, "Oh, Black women don't want you unless you're making 100K." No. That's not true. I can tell you from personal experience, my brother, that's not true. Right. It is not. Those are the things that you are seeing in your timelines because they are a reflection of the things that you follow. So because you follow materialistic things, you get materialistic things in return. I can tell you what your timeline look like based upon how it is that you interact with me. I know what your timeline look like. It's full of ass. It's full of dudes who don't got shit to do with shit. And it's full of women who got multiple body modifications that be in Dubai, but then they sleep on air mattresses at the crib. Those are the types of things that are on your timeline because you believe, or those are the things that you aspire to. You aspire to the reward, you aspire to the falsificated rewards of traditional masculinity. Mm-hmm. That's what you want. Right. You want to be able to consume at your heart's content. That is inherently Eurocentric. It is.
And they want to explain. They want to explain away their rejection, right? The reason why I don't have a partnership, the reason why I don't have quality partners, is because of this.
The reason why you don't have quality partners is because you haven't taken the time to create yourself as a quality mate.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And that's a reality situation. Like a lot of men attempt to police women about how to be wise, and they have not thought about how to be a good husband. Mm-hmm. At all. Right. I rack my brain on a regular basis about how to be a good husband, bro. Like I be terrified. Like, yo, am I gonna be a good husband? Am I gonna be a good father, bro? Like, how do I practice this? Right? A lot of men do not practice being husbands the same way women practice being wives.
Because they weren't socialized that way. A lot of women are socialized to dream of your wedding, right? Dream of serving. Like how would you serve? How your role is to serve. But for a lot of cis men, they are not socialized to think of that way. They're socialized to receive, right? They're socialized to lead. They're socialized to, okay, I see that face. I see that face, but it's true. I mean,
it is true. I'm not disagreeing, but
it's not, and I don't want to make a blanket statement, but I say in a lot of situations, they are socialized to want to be leaders, but don't know how to lead.
They are socialized to receive the spoils of victory in war. What do I mean by that? They are socialized to believe that they have to go out and sacrifice themselves in order to provide to their family. But the family provision is secondary. The primary mission is to go out and dominate and overcome. Right? Women are socialized to put their family first before anything else. Men are socialized to put their ability to conquer and to compete above everything else. Right? Which is the reason why their families end up being secondary to what it is, whether it be their careers, whether it be a whole bunch of shit. That's why their families end up being secondary. That's the reason why a number of Black men will choose to go to jail over raising a family. Because to them, going to prison gathers more manhood than raising your family. In a particular degree. Then you get to a point when you get to that age where it's like, nah, young bull, you gotta go raise your family. But by then, most of y'all are dead or in jail.
I want to go back to that. So you think that some men actually choose to go to jail rather than raise their families, and you think it's because jail represents masculinity? Could it also not be that they are afraid of raising families, and so their fear drives them to go to jail? Not necessarily that they're choosing it because it represents some kind of masculinity and manhood, but it's the fear of the other which sends them that way.
That can also be a part of it. I think another part of it is that there are some men who are genuine, especially Black men, who are just resource strapped.
Okay.
That's what it is, right? So you have a number of that. The whole idea of the welfare queen, I don't believe that to be solely associated with Black women, but there are Black women who have learned from their mothers how to manipulate the system in order to get the most out of it. The system was designed to maintain white supremacy above everything else. So poorer Black men's representation of the system is a cat and mouse game. I got to go out here and, you know what I'm saying, move this weight or do all, you know what I'm saying, be in these streets in order to provide for my family. That's just a part of what it is. Like, I do this because this is what is available, right? So a lot of them get caught up in the system of provisions, or in the system of attempting to provide. And it just so happens that being in the streets checks off all of those masculinity boxes. So I think it is a thing of fear, but it's also a thing of, I literally, because I've made these missteps, I don't have any other options beyond this point, because I've already been in jail. I'm already a felon. I'm already all of these things. Those are a lot of realities that you have to deal with. Sure. You dig what I'm saying? And it's like on top of the fact that the literacy rates for Black people on average are relatively low, right, as measured by standardized tests. But at the same time, that's how we are pushed through or navigate through the system. So for a lot of young Black men, there is this sense of, I have to go do this. There's no other way. And God damn it, at the very least, I'll be able to provide for my family in my absence. But the reality of, go ahead.
I think that's different though than saying Black men choose to go to jail, right? They're choosing to do activities that may lead them to jail, but they're not choosing to go to jail.
No, some of them choose to go to prison because prison is a representation of masculinity. So I'm going to give you an example, right? And I think it really starting at the advent of like gangster rap and stuff like that. There was some men that be like, oh, I'm not scared of going to jail. Oh, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. You know, so I'm going to do my bid and get out. Woo, woo, woo. I'm like, so what you're telling me is that you would rather go to prison than attempt to fight for your freedom because you're trying to prove a point that you can survive in prison? For what? That's an unnecessary risk. To prove what? Once again, Black men do not have a lot of healthy, constructive spaces to express masculinity in. Therefore, we seek spaces that are inherently destructive in order to prove that we are masculine. And there are some Black women who eat that up. So yes, at a particular level, because of the factors that are inherent, it is a choice. Does that make sense?
It does. I guess I'm still struggling with that, only because we know the statistics of, you know, Black men being the highest demographic to be incarcerated and the abuse that they suffer. And like, you know, I'm assuming that they would rather be free than be in the system. So yeah, I hear what you're saying, but I still struggle with equating that to them choosing to go to jail. Like I feel like they choose to do illegal activities because the activities equate to masculinity and manhood, but choosing to give up your freedom, I don't know. And we could agree to disagree on that point.
Totally,
you know,
that's totally
yeah,
fine. That's
yeah.
totally fine. And the reason, I feel like the reason why you're having so much trouble digesting it is because it doesn't make sense.
Right.
It does not, on the surface, it doesn't make sense.
It's not even that. What it sounds like to me, and I'm not saying you're doing this, but what it sounds like to me is victim blaming almost. Like, you know, the reason why some Black men find themselves in jail is because they choose to go that route because they think that it's manly. And I think that's why it bothers me, because it's like, no, Black men are victims in this situation.
No. We are
They're victims to a mentality. They're victims to a toxic mentality. They're victims to the system.
Right.
But I hear what you're saying. So it's like a both and. It's like a both and.
Exactly. It's a both and. It's not an either or. Right.
Right.
Because here's the thing. Here's the thing. I understand what it is that you're saying, and I agree with it completely. And there is still a choice that is made at the end of all of those things. Do I truly believe in my heart of hearts that that Black man standing in that courtroom is like, yeah, you know what I'm saying? I'll take this bid. Do I truly believe in my heart of hearts that that man really want to go to jail? No. I am not that stupid. No. He don't want to go to jail. He would rather be out doing what it is that he's doing. He does, but he has to save face.
Sure.
And at that point, that is a conscious choice. You are choosing to save face over yielding to the idea that, brother, maybe you cannot take this plea so that you can still be out. Right? You are making a conscious choice in order to support this concept of masculinity that 9 times out of 10, some of your niggas not even gonna be there for you in the end. They really not.
A conscious choice, however ill-informed.
However ill-informed.
Sure, okay.
However ill-informed, right? We're not talking about the information, we're talking about the choice at hand, right? Because somebody said that to me on TikTok too. They were like, you know, you're perpetuating this idea of Black men being just, I'm like, yo, I'm a Black man. I will never subscribe to the idea that Black men ain't shit. I will subscribe to the idea that we do ain't shit. Right? And we do that because we exist in a system where we believe that masculinity has to exist in the space of exploitation and manipulation.
Right.
You feel what I'm saying?
Right.
And it doesn't have to exist that way. It really does not. But because so many of us have been ill-informed, and not only that, ill-informed and then placed in structures where we cannot access things that would even give us the feeling of healthy masculinity, it then becomes a nihilistic or self-damaging behavior. Right. Because we do not have the same amount of access or the same amount of things that other people have. You dig what I'm saying? That's the reason why a lot of young Black men join gangs. If you really do the research on why there's a young Black men join gangs, that has nothing to do with money, has very little to do with protection, even though that's a factor. The largest factor is family. The largest factor is brotherhood. The largest factor is giving me a purpose. Mm-hmm. I have something to live and die for.
Right. And also giving me a space where I can enact my masculinity, giving me a space where I can, play that out, play that scenario out. Yeah.
Exactly. Right. Do I believe that these things in totality are wrong? No. I believe that they're implemented in a systematic way so that Black men move in these ways. You dig what I'm saying? Because to be quite honest with you, to be totally honest with you,
I hope you're only honest.
It's a phraseology that I like to use because sometimes people be lying. Feel me? I would say 80 to 90% of Black street gangs began as spaces for development, growth, understanding. Like, for example, why is his name leaving me right now? Not Jeff Fort. What is his name? Larry Hoover, right? Gangster Disciple, Chicago, Illinois, right? Started as a gang of sorts, right? Over time, what Larry Hoover recognized was that I'm doing more damage. I have a lot of influence. I'm doing more damage than good. Let's shift this up. Let's shake this up, right? I think it was either around the 1980s or the 1990s. It went from the Gangster Disciples, and he attempted to rebrand it as Growth and Development, right? GD. Mm-hmm. What happened was that in the 1990s and the early 2000s, the Chicago Police Department and the Chicago administration began doing a multitude of things. They began arresting all the gang leaders, and they began tearing down all the projects because they thought that that's what was going to dispel all of the gang violence in Chicago. What really happened was they just spread it out, and then they created vacuums of power. So they really just started fucking everything else up. Here's the thing that gets swept under the rug most times. The Vice Lords and the GDs in Chicago, the Vice Lord started as a social club to prevent white, angry men from coming into Black neighborhoods and tearing shit up, right? The Black P Stones, their structure is mostly aligned, was mostly aligned with the Black Panther Party because they were learning how to do particular things in the Black community from that space. If I get that correctly, if I got that well, I really hope I did. I think I did. I may have to do more research. Don't quote me on that, but still. Gang history usually begins with Black men attempting to gather other Black men to protect their community, one, and two, raise their children. Right? What happened was that one, crack era, right? The CIA dropped off crack in the Black communities in order to fund the fucking war in Nicaragua. People be like, oh, Snowfall's just fictional. No, it's not. That's one. But also two, these Black men engaged in the First Amendment, engaged in the Second Amendment, right? They were doing things that, in a sense, were extremely lawful. They just were not lawful for Black men. Right. That's the reason why people consistently try to align the Black Panther Party and the Ku Klux Klan. Don't you ever disrespect Dr. Huey P. Newton like that. Don't you ever. Right? Because
same thing that they're doing with BLM right now.
Exactly, right? So knowing your history or knowing gang history, especially Black gang history, is important to understanding how Black men have attempted to develop healthy masculine spaces in the Black community, but they were intercepted. So you are absolutely correct. Black men are victims to a circumstance, and at the same time, we still make choices that are ill-informed that continue to cause us destruction. You dig what I'm saying? Which then coalesces into this idea of Black women being married to men and being single parents still. Why? Because this idea of masculinity is no longer, we gotta take care of this mother and these babies. It's now I gotta perform and parade for these other niggas because I don't have a space for me to express this healthy masculinity.
Right.
Which is the reason why now we have to change it again. And we have to change it from something that's external to something that's internal.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And a lot of my work as a doula is, and anyways, a lot of my work as a doula is to really help empower the partner to be a present parent so that the emotional and mental load doesn't fall on the primary birth, or I don't want to say primary, the birthing person. There are male doulas that are coming up now, and I think that's a great idea to really, bridge that gap. But in the meantime, I'm still gonna do, my work and try to fill that gap as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think it's really important to look at it from the perspective of Black men being victims, but also Black men being perpetrators of oppression, because it's a two-sided coin, right? A lot of Black men, you said convenient ignorance. I think the convenient ignorance works in terms of victimhood, right? We like to conveniently ignore the oppression that we cause Black women in order to continue to laud about the fact that we are victims. Yeah, brother, we victims. You're absolutely correct. You're right. That does not mean that we have the right to then oppress somebody else, especially the only people in the world who are going to continue to understand us at the rate that they understand us.
And support.
Exactly. You get what I'm saying? Like right. I'm gonna say the same thing to you that I said to the other young lady just on the first episode. Like, I sincerely appreciate the fact that y'all still rocking with us. You feel what I'm saying? Because at times we make it hard. We make it hard. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Most definitely. But I think that that's a very impactful conversation, or I think it's a very important conversation as it relates to that emotional absence and what creates that emotional absence, right? Because how can I explain it? There are a lot of men who believe that if you raise your boy to be too soft, he will not defend the family. So he has to be hard in order to learn how to be hard. Or he has to be hardened in order to learn how to be hard. And I'm like, yo, you realize that survival is a mechanism of the brain, and it's not something that's always taught, right? Like, you literally cannot teach somebody out of survival. It's a built-in mechanism, bro. Like, you don't really got to worry about that too much. Can you put your children into self-defense classes? Absolutely. Can you put your child into things that they, you know what I'm saying? Absolutely. But you are going to have some Black men who just don't want to do that. Some Black men are going to want to dance. They're going to want to paint. They're going to want to do pottery, and that's cool.
Yeah.
But they're going to learn throughout their lives, or they're going to learn throughout. I would rather have my son be in spaces where he can express himself in a particular way. And then I can tell him as he gets older, like, yo, it's okay to get a partner, or it's okay to seek a partner that makes up where you lack, instead of forcing him to try to do something that he doesn't want to do.
Right.
Right? Because I feel like it'd be kind of cool to have a daughter-in-law, you know what I'm saying, if he a part of the LG, if he a rainbow homie, it'd be cool to have a daughter-in-law or a son-in-law or somebody-in-law who know how to beat ass. I feel like that'd be pretty fucking cool.
Right.
I don't care which one of y'all beat ass, but somebody gotta know how to beat ass.
Somebody gotta know.
Somebody gotta know how to beat ass. Somebody. Right? It don't gotta be you, but it gotta be one of y'all.
Right, but you better find somebody. Yeah.
Better find somebody, because listen, listen, self-defense for me as a Black person, yo, like me as a person, I'm really not a gun person because mental health, right? I'm terrified of that shit. I don't want to be too close to something like that. But in terms of martial arts, bro,
right?
What? I need somebody in the chest with a quickness, like bang, you feel me? Like, absolutely, absolutely, right? But self-defense, as it relates to emotions, right? A lot of people believe that self-defense has to come in this space where I am attempting to protect myself from you attempting to pull these emotions from me. So instead of leaning into these emotions, I am defending against the hurt and the pain that I know is going to come with looking at these things.
And being vulnerable.
And that's something that we as Black men need to, you know what I'm saying, kind of remove from. So, Miss JoAn, we need to have a second episode. The reason being is because we had a second topic that we were supposed to cover, but we used a whole hour for this one. So I really want you to come back. I really want you to, you know what I'm saying? We're gonna.
I'd be happy to come back. Yeah.
You came with it. You said, bang. A lot of birthing partners are single but married to. I was like, oh.
Yeah.
They're not ready for that one.
I think this was a fruitful conversation because we covered a lot of the social background to what causes this phenomenon. Well, that's not a phenomenon, but what causes this issue in a lot of families. Yeah, so I think we had a pretty fruitful conversation.
Oh, most definitely. And that's the thing. Like a lot of people, what I've recognized as being a therapist, a behavioral health coach, a behavioral wealth coach, all of those things, is that people believe that phenomena are isolated and exist in a vacuum. They do not. A phenomena has legs, a phenomena has roots, a phenomena has structures, irrespective of how small it is. Because even an atom, something that you cannot see, has structure within it that creates that structure. Even a cell that you cannot see unless you have particular equipment has structures within it that create that phenomenon. You dig what I'm saying? So if we continue to look at things as one-dimensional or as isolating or isolated, we tend to miss everything else around it.
Right.
And once again, that's Eurocentric because they tend to look at the event.
Level. Yeah.
Right? But Black folk, African folk, diaspora folk were like, nah, you tell us what happened.
Right. Let me get out to the bottom.
What would you say? Tell us the whole story.
Really? Yeah.
What really happened? Tell us the whole story, because that don't sound right.
Right.
What is the context? What is the context in which this happened? Right? Which is the reason why I said earlier in the conversation, there are a lot of times where we as Black people attempt to force ourselves into a hierarchy or into a context that we do not fit in.
Yeah, that wasn't made for us.
It was not made for us.
It was made to keep us back, but it wasn't made to elevate us. It was
made to make us think as if though we were doing something wrong, when the reality of the situation is the building that we in it was made for us to think that the building that we are in that is dirty, filthy, and not created correctly, it's our fault that this building is this way. Nah, y'all built it this way.
Yeah, and it's working exactly how it was designed. It's working exactly how it was designed. Nothing's broken. Y'all made it this way.
But you know what the best part about all of this is for me? Black millennials, bro. My spirit becomes so warm when I think about Black millennials because we are really doing some heavy spiritual lifting.
Healing. A lot of healing.
What, boy?
A lot of healing.
What? Listen, we are having conversations that our parents refused to have.
Lord, I feel like I'm carrying generations of healing. Like I'm in therapy. I'm working through my own stuff, but I'm also working through grandma, great grandma, all that. I'm working through all of that for her, for them, for y'all.
We didn't want to come through this nonsense, but hey, no, I lie. God will carry me. You feel me? It's in there. But listen, Ms. JoAn, I greatly appreciate the time. I don't want to keep you too long. I try to keep these to an hour, you feel me? Like I said, you're going to spin the block again. You know what I'm saying? We're going to come back to Odie's office. We're going to sit down and have another conversation. All right?
That was good.
Yes, ma'am.